Hi everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to bake up the rest of our cookie dough from yesterday, our M&M Easter cookies. We are going to prep some Aunt Aggie's cookies in some Easter colors, and then we're going to make some open face melts and think that's what we're on the docket for today. So let's start by, let's get our last of our cookie dough yesterday. I told you we baked them up and then my kids have been picking at it throughout the day. So we have enough to make a few more. We're going to get these in the oven and cook them up. And then we'll start on our Aunt Aggie's dough, which is, I've made those a couple of times before on streams, but they are a family favorite. And the best part about them is you can really change up the colors for any holiday. So we made some, I think the last time we made it was for St. Patrick's Day. You know, we did green, orange, and white. And so today we're going to do some Easter pastels. They're a delicious mix between a sugar and a butter cookie that you make the dough and then you got to chill it in the freezer until it's solid. And then you just cut them off into little circles and then they bake up. So it's a simple dough. We're going to make that in a second. And then using our leftover yeast rolls from last night's dinner, we made a sourdough yeast roll. We are going to cut them open and do two that are a kind of like a Reuben open face melt in the oven. And then we're going to do a couple that are like an Italian open face melt. So just another way to kind of use up some of your leftovers, recreate them into something delicious for that. And then I've got a pineapple and a honeydew melon that is begging to be cut up. So little things on here. We're rolling them out. We don't have much dough of this, but this was just a really simple dough. It's our kind of our base dough that I used for my chocolate chip cookies, my white chocolate chip macadamia nut, M&M cookies. But the way to make them perfect is you've got to let the dough chill. And so I always make sure it chills a couple of hours for it. We made these yesterday during our lunchtime stream. We prepped up the dough. And now we're going to bake them up. But chilling that dough gives you that nice, chewy cookie that doesn't get hard or crunchy. You know, a lot of times when you bake up a cookie, it will spread out really fast. And like that's because the butter isn't cold enough. And that leaves you for a crunchier cookie. These turn out like perfect every single time. Just making enough room. We've got one more on there, and then we're going to pop these in the oven for 9 minutes at 375. Okay, let's get these in the oven. That way we can have my kids can have some fresh cookies when they come back from their Easter egg hunt. They're doing our neighborhood Easter egg hunt right now. So we're going to pop these in the oven, and then I'm going to set my timer for 9 minutes. Okay, I'm gonna go give my hands a quick wash from rolling them out to get them a little bit buttery. Okay, now we're gonna make up our Aunt Aggie's dough, which again is like our favorite cookie ever in this house. It's a recipe, it's a family recipe from the 1800s. So we're gonna start out by creaming 2 sticks of butter. So 1 cup of butter. You'll want room temperature butter. It just creams into the sugar much better. We're going to add them into our stand mixer. You could do this with a hand mixer if you wanted to, or, you know, use a little elbow grease. I just find it's a little bit easier with the stand mixer. Okay, so we got 2 full sticks of salted butter. And then we're going to add in 1.5 cups of granulated sugar. So 1 and a half. I'm going to lift it up, and then we're going to let them cream together. While these are creaming, let me get a second bowl out. We're going to separate 3 eggs because we're going to use just the yolks for this recipe. And I'm thinking about saving my whites to make some maybe macaroons later. So we're going to use 3 eggs. We're going to separate them. So we're going to crack them in half. And then you kind of just go back and forth. I'm going to put the yolk over there. And this is the way I was just taught to just kind of go back and forth until all of that yolk has, or the egg white has fallen off. You just have to be careful not to puncture your yolk. There we go. Okay. So we've got 3 egg yolks. I'll save my whites for another recipe. I'm going to give this a nice mix up. I'm going to get my spatula and push down all the butter that may have gotten stuck to the side of my bowl, because we want it all to cream together nicely for these Aunt Aggies. And we're going to dye the dough in some fun Easter colors. And I'm going to see if I can try to shape them in an oval to see if they'll bake up. I once tried to do like a pumpkin shape with the Aunt Aggie's, but it just turned into a big blob. So I'm going to see if I can oval it out more and make it look like an Easter egg when we cut them up. All right, let's get, as our butter and sugar are creaming, we're going to add in our 3 yolks. 1, 2, 3. And we're going to let those cream together into our bowl. It's going to give our dough a nice gold color. So if you want to look, you can look in here and you can see the nice gold color of our dough. That's kind of the richness of it. And that's what makes these cookies so good. The butter and the yolks, and it's just, there's like only a few ingredients in it, but it makes them such a delicious cookie. Now we're going to add in 1 teaspoon of baking soda. So this is a half teaspoon. So I'm going to just do 2 halves. The reason I'm using my half teaspoon one is because my cream of tartar jar is, the mouth is too small for my full teaspoon in there. And then we're going to use 1 teaspoon of cream of tartar. Some places cream of tartar is also called alum. Okay. And we're going to cream the baking soda and the cream of tartar into the egg and sugar mixture and butter. Give it a good mix. And now the last ingredient in this is just flour. So it is a very, very simple recipe. And the best way I can describe it is it's like a mix between a butter cookie and a sugar cookie. It's not as sweet as a sugar cookie, but it's more sweet than a butter cookie. We're going to add in 2 cups of all-purpose flour. So 1 and 2. And we're going to cream this mixture together. We're going to let those cream up there. And then I think we're going to do, for our colors, we're going to do a pale blue. How to get that, robin's blue. A pale yellow, a pale pink, and a pale green. See, I find dyeing for purple, I've never been able to find the right purple when you buy it, and sometimes mixing it makes the colors a bit too strong. Okay, I'm going to push all of my butter that's caught on the side down. Okay. And then we're going to cream it. And you got to make sure I'm using the paddle attachment on my mixer. And you just want to make sure you get all that butter out. And then we're going to let this cream together. Okay. And it starts out as a loose shag and then it forms together. So we're going to let that cream over there. While we're doing that, we're going to start prepping our open-faced sandwiches that we're going to pop in the oven to melt up and heat. So last night, We made these delicious sourdough yeast rolls, and we have 4 of our 12 left. So we're going to cut them open, and we're going to do a couple different flavors. You check on this. Nice. I'm going to leave that right there. Okay, so we're going to cut each one open. We're going to put this on our baking sheet. I always like to try to reuse our, any leftovers we have. I try not to have anything go to waste, but just think of ways to change them up so that they can be a completely different meal. And we're out of our sourdough. So we just have we're baking up new loaves tonight. We've got another traditional loaf baking up. And then we have a cranberry cherry lemon loaf. We're going to use some Havarti cheese. And I'm just going to kind of give it a cut because we want it to not overflow too much over the side of our baking sheet. Otherwise, you'll be cleaning up. There we go. So just making little squares. And you could do this with, honestly, you can make, if you ever have extra dinner rolls left over, this is just a great way to reuse them for a sandwich. Okay. So we've got our first, I'll make sure I've got my flats down. Now I've got some corned beef. So we're going to make some kind of Reubens with one. And I'm going to fold up. The nice thing with this is you can do your meat thicker on it than if you were doing a grilled cheese because it is going to be heating up. Let's do our cheese on the other side as well. Because what I like to do is I like to stack them, and then once we heat them up in the oven, you put them together. So you have like this just nice, the inside gets cooked without the tops of the bread getting overcooked. Okay. So we'll get cheese on these as well. And this is Havarti cheese that I'm using. Havarti is just a great mild cheese that you can use, so you don't have to worry about it overpowering. But let's go. I hear our cookies. Sounds like our cookies are done. So we'll take a mini pause in here and grab out our cookies. Grab a trivet here, but you can see how pretty they turned out. Beautiful. And so you see their nice poofy dome. This is what you want. They're going to continue to cook a few more minutes on the tray, so you're going to let them sit. But they are the perfect chewy cookie that has that nice flavor. You can't eat them right away. You've got to let them sit for about 5 minutes, but they will be perfect. And the Easter M&Ms, the pastels that are coming out, really just make a nice little pop of color. Okay. Let's get our sandwiches made up here. So we've got our roast beef. So we're going to do 2 sets that are roast beef, or not roast beef, corned beef. That's why the corned beef. We're doing Reubens. So we're going to put our corned beef on both sides. That way it will allow it to heat up. And then we're going to do a kind of a salami and pepperoni melt on the other ones. So we've got some Genoa salami. We're going to put 2 slices there, and then we're going to do some pepperoni on the top part. And then we'll do 3 slices on the top. And there. And then what we'll do is we'll pop these in the oven, and what will happen is that the oven will heat it up, melt it, but it will keep the bread from being like dried out too much because we have them facing down, so the top gets a lot more heat. And then I do like to add a little bit of red onions over here to these. I like to add them so that they toast up in the oven just a little bit. for this. And then we're going to add a little bit of sauerkraut so it just warms up as well, because I don't want my sauerkraut to be cold on my things. We're just going to add a little bit here, but we'll add the rest of our sauces and then our lettuce and tomatoes when they come out of the oven. Okay. So we're going to go pop these in the oven. And these are just, we're going to bake them at the 375 with that we had our cookies on for about 5 minutes. We just want the cheese to warm up and start to melt, and the meat to toast up as well. So it doesn't need long, just a little bit of time. So I'm just going to set my timer up so I know when to start heading back. Okay. While we're doing that, our dough, we're going to pull it out here and we are going to smush it together because it starts out as a crumbly dough, but we're going to press it together. And then when we add our food coloring into it, it will help cling it together a bit more too. Okay. So we're going to get all of it out onto our counter. There we go. And then I'm going to squeeze and knead it together. You see how when we push it together, it really forms into a nice kind of ball. There we go. And then we're going to break this up, and I'm going to divide this into 4 parts once I get it all pushed together. And we're going to dye each of those one of our fun little Easter colors. There we go. So you give it a good knead together. That's why I said it has kind of like the texture of a shortbread cookie, a butter cookie, but it is sweeter. So it's kind of like a nice little mix of both, and they're just delicious. Okay, let me slide up our things. I'm going to divide this into 4 equal parts. A lot of times I will double this recipe so that I can just keep logs of this in my freezer. So whenever my kids want some homemade cookies, I can pull out a log, cut them up, and bake them. Let's see. Okay, so we've got our 4 fairly equal. Doesn't have to be perfect. Now what we're going to do is you're going to knead in your colors. So I like to make a little ball, like a little circle on each side. It's kind of like a well. And that's where we're going to add our food coloring in. So I think we've got our pink there. We'll do our blue. We've got this nice kind of light green. And then I think instead of yellow, I'm actually going to do orange. So what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to do a little bit of yellow in it. And then like 1 drop of pink to give you that orange. And then we might need to add a little bit more in each one, but we're going to just start the kneading process up. I always say start with the lighter colored ones because they do kind of dye your hands a little bit, but you're going to knead the color in. You could always, like, since we're using a small amount, it's just best to do it by hand than to try to do it in your mixer. There we go. And then we're just kneading the color in. As you can see, as we move, it comes out more. But these will then, what we'll do is then we're going to kind of mix them together so that each color is in our final logs. And then they bake up. And I will say they bake up a bit more vibrant than your starting color, is what I have noticed over time. When the color sits in them in the freezer, it really comes out a bit more. Okay, so here we've got our nice kind of pastel-y orange. Okay, so we've got our pastel orange right here, nice and pretty. Let's go grab our sandwiches out of the oven, and then we're going to roll up our last 2 or 3 balls there. Okay. Put our oven mitts on. Nice. We got the cheese just nice in that perfect beginner melt. Excellent. We're gonna let these sit here for just a second. Continue kind of melting while we roll up the rest. So we've got our orange done. It's got a beautiful light pastel. Now we're gonna do our pink. And sometimes, you know, you might need to add a little bit more, but I always start out when you're doing a pastel, start out with less and add more in because you can't take out the color. There we go. And this is going to be our lovely pink. And you just knead it in like you're kneading a dough. There you go. And you can use either liquid food coloring or the gel. Either one works. If you're using straight up liquid, sometimes you might need to throw in a bit more flour just in case you have to use a lot to get the color that you need. Okay. Here is our pink. So we've got our orange, our pink. Now we're going to do our blue. We're going to do nice pastel blue. Hopefully get it a nice robin's egg color. I will say certain colors, a little goes a lot longer. And so blue is definitely one that has a lot of color in it, red as well, versus like yellows and oranges and even greens don't go quite as much. Here we go. You're seeing we're getting this nice kind of robin's egg color. And perfect. Trying to get all of the ones that are flying out. So we've got our nice blue. And now we're going to do our green. And this is going to be a kind of a nice green. And that's why I started with the orange and then the red, because you can mix kind of the orange and the red. Then I did the red into the blue because the blue is a pretty strong color and it won't change that. It won't mess with the color of it. And then I do blue, like after the blue, I do the green because blue can mix into green and it will still look fine. That way I don't have to really wash my hands between each one. And now we're getting this nice kind of spring green. Here we go. And it is almost mixed up. I will say it's definitely a good little, hand workout. So if you need to relieve some stress, this is great. So here we've got our 4 Easter colors. I'm going to give my hands a nice wash now. Okay. And then what we do to make our logs is, let me grab out. You can use parchment paper, wax paper, or cling wrap or snap. I'm using parch paper today because I have run out of cling wrap, which I typically love to use. So what you're going to do is we're going to just divide these because these are going to make 2 logs. And now what I like to do is we're going to kind of stretch it all out across. Doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to smush it into the shape we want. But you're just trying to make a long little rope or whatnot. Across. And then I always try to get the colors that are more different from each other farther away from each other. You know what I mean? Or I guess I don't want the pink necessarily right next to the green because those are more similar. There we go. Yes, pink and orange. I like the pink and the green next to it because they're different versus, just so you have some of those more contrasts in it. So we've got our whole little log here. And then what I'm going to do is we're going to break it in half. I'm going to do it like this. That way you're going to get kind of this really cool tie-dyed effect in it. And now we're going to make it out into a big log. Like this. And then when you roll it, it's going to make it more of a circle and even. Okay, I'll show you guys. So, and then we'll roll it back up. But this is, so you have this beautiful little pastel log. And then what you do is you freeze them down. And then when they're nice and frozen, you just cut them up into nice thin slices. You place them out on a cookie sheet and you bake them for about 7 minutes. And you have perfect fresh baked cookies in no time. So we'll do the same thing. Now there's a couple other methods that you can do. There's the one where you just do like, so you just break like a bunch of crumbs this way and you kind of spread it out. This will look more like a mixture versus the other one will look more uniform. So you could do it like this. And this kind of gives you just a more random look. So like kind of like a speckled egg. But they always turn out nice and pretty. There we go. And then you kind of just scrunch it together. Like that. And then you're just going to slide it towards one end of your parchment paper. That way you can kind of wrap it up. And then you just go, and this is going to smooth it out. And then when you see it, when you unwrap it, you see how it all smushes together, and it gives you more of a kind of a splatter effect in it. So we'll wrap these up. These will go in the freezer. We'll be able to cook them up tonight for dinner.
Oh, you have a question? How did you learn to do all this?
You know what? Over years, I just followed recipes and I practiced. And, over time you get better and better at it. And I just took family recipes and altered them up. Growing up, these, they used to be just done white, but I was like, oh, let's add some fun colors to it. And you can make them cooler and whatnot, but just, practicing through time. Okay, let's get our sandwiches finished up here. For our Reubens, we're going to put a little bit of Chick-fil-A sauce. And you've got your nice little Reubens. And then we'll do some mayo on one. If it wants to come out. There we go. And then we'll add some fresh tomato. Perfect. And a little bit of butter lettuce. So we've got some butter lettuce on this one. And some butter lettuce on that one. And now you've got these just perfect little mini, almost like sliders that we're going to having for lunch. And then we're going to cut up some fresh fruit. So these two I've been needing our fresh fruit to be cut up so soon. And somebody has been asking me to show them how to cut up a pineapple. So I'm going to show you guys my really easy way to cut up a pineapple, which will save you like $10 a pop. So we're going to start, when you buy your pineapple, put it on the counter for a couple of days until it's nice and golden. If you see a lot of green, it is not ready to be cut up yet. See, now I've got this perfect golden color inside. That means it's nice and sweet and perfect. And then you're just going to cut off the top and the bottom so you have a nice flat surface to work with. Super simple. Cut right down through the middle. We're going to cut each one into fourths, so like the whole thing into fourths. And then to get that core out, you're just going to cut off the top of the triangle part. And then I cut it down one more time. And we just slide along here. And boom, you've got your nice pineapple chunks that cost you, what, $3 instead of 10. I will never buy store-bought pineapple, because when they cut it up for you, they overcharge you an arm and a leg for something that you guys could cut up a pineapple in less than 5 minutes at home. And you also know it's good. So many times you buy their pre-cut pineapple and it is like tart, bitter, crunchy because they cut it when it wasn't ripe. This is when it's perfect. And that's because, most produce, unless you're getting it at a true fruit stand in the middle of the road, most produce was picked way before it was ripe. So it's underripe. And you get it at the store and it's still underripe. Very rarely is it at its, peak when you're buying it. So you need to let it sit for a couple of days to let it fully ripen. And that's when you know it's ready to cook up. Like, let's see. This, we just got another pineapple. This pineapple right here is not ripe. You see how green it is? Look at this. Look at the color difference. This is a ripe pineapple. Once you start to see it's starting to go gold. It's going to go golden on the bottom first before it gets to the top. Once it starts going golden on the bottom until you get halfway, that was when it's ready. You don't have to wait for the whole thing to go gold. Just need to for the bottom up. And that will ensure you a nice, sweet, juicy, perfect pineapple. Because nothing is worse when you get unripe pineapple. It's one of those fruits that you just can't eat before it is ready. So look at this. We cut this whole pineapple in less than 5 minutes. That pineapple cost me $2.79. This would have cost me easily $10 at the grocery store. So if you're thinking about ways to save money, cut up your own fruit. Same thing here. We've got a honeydew melon. Really easy to cut up. If you've never seen the inside, you've got seeds in it just like that. And all you do to get rid of those seeds, because they're not good, is you're just going to take a spoon in here and scoop it out. Don't be afraid to get into the melon because you don't want any of that fibrous, stringy stuff because it's just not a good texture. It's going to be really mushy, and it doesn't have the best flavor right there. So just scrape off that last little thing, just like this. Just scoop in there, slide it around, almost like you're serving yourself some ice cream. There you go. You get all those seeds out. And then the way I like to do it with melons, so we're just going to slice them down as if you were making watermelon slices that you were going to eat. So go right there. And then you just make individual slices across like this. And watch, when you slice it, you now have a flat surface that you can then slide your knife under just like this, which gets you close enough to the rind. And then you have perfect little slices and then get you close there so you're not missing out. Because I understand, like, it is harder to cut on a curve if you're not used to it. But if you do those slices first, then you can just hold your melon down and then just make one straight slice underneath. And the same thing also, when you buy your melons, like your cantaloupes and your honeydews, let them sit on your counter for a day or two, because then you'll ensure that they're more ripe, because you don't want them to be, if they're really hard to touch when you grab them, they need to sit a little bit. Melons are a little bit harder to understand when they're ripe versus a pineapple really shows you. But I always like to wait until my melon is firm with a little bit of give, so that you can it's softened up a little. That's when I know that it is going to be sweet and tender. Because sometimes you'll get it and it will be rock hard, and it really needed to sit out for a couple more days to ripen up. Here we've got our lovely melon here. And then if you want to, you could always just do a long slice like that underneath it, and you could have long slices. But I find that people will eat fresh fruit more if it's cut up and bite-sized and repaired. So if you're thinking, oh, I want to put more fruit in my life or one of those things, but you don't want to spend all the money on pre-cut ones, just like make it a day of the week, a weekend to cut your fruit up. Then you could put it in little containers and have it throughout the week. That way you'll eat the fresh fruit that you cut up instead of it going bad on, in your fridge or on the counter. When I cut up my fruit for the kids and they see it, they know then they'll eat it. They have no problem eating it. Versus if you just leave it there, they're not going to just willingly go and grab it. But I do try to make sure we offer fresh fruit at every one of their meals because I want them to eat the fresh fruit. There we go. And then we can plate up our pineapple, our honeydew, and our sandwiches for lunch today. And we'll have those cookies chilling. I'm excited for them. I always love doing fun colors and whatnot. My kids get really excited about them. The Aunt Aggie's cookies, I'll tell you, if you asked every one of my kids, they would probably, every single one would say it was their favorite cookie. And they love to eat them about 5 to 10 minutes after they come out of the oven because they're still super soft once they come out of the oven. Now, they kind of crisp up after a day or so. They're still good, but they're like a different type of cookie then. Okay. Look at this. 2 big bowls of fruit cut up and ready saved me probably at least 10, 15 bucks for that instead of having the grocery store cut it up. So let's serve up lunch today. So we've got and have a Reuben slider and our Italian melt slider, plus some fresh fruit. We've got honeydew and pineapple. And of course, let's not forget our Easter cookies for dessert. So, simple way to use some of our leftovers. We have we had made a Reuben melt on our leftover sourdough yeast roll from last night using corned beef, some Havarti cheese, and some sauerkraut. We made an Italian melt using pepperoni and salami and lettuce and tomatoes, red onions. We cut up our fruit, and then, of course, our little Easter cookies for dessert. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. I like to, hopefully you guys learned something and just like to show you what we're cooking for our family. And don't forget to like and subscribe. We upload all of our videos on the link on our page. So if you always want to rewatch them or cook along with them, you can do that. Thanks again for joining us.